Wait, what are those drums I hear? The drums of peak fiction?
I'm sure you guys know about Monster Hunter, right? Even if you haven't played it, you've probably heard of it at the very least. Honestly, I owe quite a lot to this series. Not just because I had tons of fun with the games I played, or the fact I met so many of my close friends during my hundreds of hours hunting. The real reason I owe so much to this series is because playing it led to me discovering a completely different series. One that ended up overtaking Monster Hunter's spot on my favorite game series list, God Eater. This one you may or may not know about. It falls within the Monster Hunter style of gameplay that surprisingly few games attempt to replicate. There are notable Monhunt likes though, such as Tokiden, Wild Hearts, Freedom Wars, and probably a bunch of others I either haven't gotten to play or just don't know about. But yeah, this video's kinda just gonna be me rambling about God Eater and why I like the game so much. But before I even get into that, I should probably explain what the series is even about. God Eater takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where giant monsters called origami have been terrorizing everyone and pushing the human race towards the brink of extinction. Humans weren't just gonna keel over and die though, so after years of research, an organization called Fenrir came up with a way to counter the origami. By taking oracle cells, which are what origami are made of, and infusing them into weapons, God Arcs were created. These weapons are the only way to fight origami. Unfortunately, not everyone is able to wield one, which is why they aren't just being handed out at every opportunity. If someone has the potential to use a God Arc, they have to do a series of tests before eventually being fused with an armlet, which allows them to use a God Arc. That last part might sound a bit crazy, but it's totally fine. I mean, it's not like it hurts.
I wish you the best of luck.
Not that much anyways. But yeah, that's basically the general premise of God Eater. I'm not planning on going too in-depth with that stuff since that would make the video way too long. Although if you're interested, you should totally go watch Weapons God Eater reviews. They're pretty informative and honestly just a really fun watch. Now then, with that out the way, I can talk about how I've grown to love the series so much. And to start things off, we gotta go all the way back to... Around this time, just like a lot of other people, I was playing tons of Monster Hunter Rise. It was my first Monster Hunter game and I had tons of fun, from just messing around with my friends, pulling off water bug tricks and all that. It was a real great time. But naturally, I did eventually start to play less and less over time. The game was really fun, but I didn't want to get burnt out. So I started branching out and looking for other stuff to play. I went to play Monster Hunter World and a bit of Generations Ultimate, both of which were pretty damn fun. But despite that, I kept coming back to Rise. I just really loved how fast paced that game was, and I honestly was kinda desperate to find a game that was at least somewhat similar to how Rise felt. Now, the realm of quote unquote Monster Hunter likes is pretty vast, although at the time I was basically clueless. A friend did eventually recommend Tokiden, which I ended up trying out for a bit, but honestly I wasn't really vibing with it all too much, so I didn't get very far. However, during that being kinda tired of Rise but not having anything else to play phase, I happened to come across a certain game, God Eater 3 actually. Yeah, the first game I actually played just happened to be the latest one. I sure do have a knack for discovering a numbered game series and starting with the last game instead of the first. But anyways, God Eater 3 was on sale and it looked pretty cool to me, so I decided to give it a try. I watched the opening, I make my character, I start playing, and oh, this game feels like ass. Yeah, I wasn't rocking with how that game felt, so I stopped playing and kinda forgot about the series for a while. That is, until... Yeah, pretty huge time skip, but it just be like that sometimes. Anyways, after beating Foes from 0, I told myself to wait a while before starting the next game so I don't get burnt out. However, I kinda needed something to play since East 10 hadn't dropped in English yet and I was still on summer break. So once again, I started looking at games. If I remember correctly, I ended up getting a few games this time around, but out of everything I got, there was one game that had me hooked really quickly. God Eater Resurrection. Now, by this time, I was well past my Monster Hunter phase, but with the release of Wilds getting closer and closer, the urge to hunt eventually came crawling back to me, which resulted in me picking this game up to tide me over. Yeah, I'll just play this for a bit. Once Wilds comes out, I'm gonna be on that like 24/7.
So that was a fucking lie.
In all seriousness though, I genuinely wanted to give the series another chance. With how long I've known about the games, I decided to finally dedicate some time to playing them. And man, did I need to dedicate time, because I was completely terrible at this game when I first started. Don't get me wrong, it was fun. Really fun. Learning the mechanics, getting used to the overall feeling of the game, and growing comfortable with your weapon is part of what made the whole experience so memorable. I picked the scythe as my first weapon and ended up sticking with it through the entire series. Although I did eventually start trying out the spear, which was really fun. Feeling myself go from just run around, hit the origami and pray to God I don't get hit, to actually being able to read the origami's movements and react to whatever attack is thrown at me was really something special. That process definitely took a while though, because I was really getting my ass kicked in some of those missions. Realizing I could just use my shield instead of trying to dodge or jump over every attack was a real big eye-opener. Making good use of guarding along with dodging when I needed to made the missions way more manageable. Again, it was all a learning process, and a really fun one at that. Something else that makes fighting origami so fun, aside from the weapons themselves, is the devour mechanic. It's kind of another incentive to stay relatively close to the origami as you're fighting. Being in burst noticeably increases your fighting abilities, so staying in that powered up state is a pretty big priority. It's not like the origami are impossible to fight without being in burst, but the improvements you get will definitely give you an upper hand, so I'd always be on the lookout for an opening to go in for a devour attack. And you really gotta be mindful with these, cause a poorly timed one will really screw you over. I really am grateful that I decided to go back and play the series in order, cause getting to see how the series evolved from game to game was an experience in and of itself. The additions of the blood arts in 2 kinda had me hyped. On one hand, it felt a bit weird not having the different predator styles from Resurrection, but on the other hand, the blood arts felt like a way to express yourself and make your playstyle feel more unique. Most of the time, you and your friends will be using different weapons and blood arts, so nobody's playstyle is going to be the exact same. There's way more blood arts than predator styles anyway, so it's a pretty satisfying trade-off in my eyes. I may not have used all of them, but experimenting with different arts and changing up how I approach a mission made fighting feel really refreshing, even despite the fact that the first 2 games are on the exact same engine. And don't even get me started on Blood Rage, man, that shit is so cool. It really comes in clutch when you're fighting multiple origami. You could use it to take out an origami with less health and even out the odds a bit. I'll never forget when I first used Blood Rage in a mission. I realized that on top of making your attacks way stronger, it just lets you dash infinitely as well. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Plus, it even gets its own theme. How could you not love this mechanic? Seeing it not come back in 3 was kinda disappointing, to be honest. Yeah, it might have been a bit overpowered, but at the same time, you really had to lock in if you wanted to activate Blood Rage, so it seemed like a pretty fair deal. But I guess it being exclusive to God Eater 2 makes the mechanic itself and the blood unit feel more special in a way. I think the adaptive God Eaters in 3 are supposed to be even stronger, but I'm biased as hell towards 2. I'm forever a member of the blood unit. But speaking of God Eater 3, this one's actually my favorite in the series gameplay wise. Ironic considering I dropped the game when I was younger because I didn't like how it felt. I guess playing the first 2 games helped me get used to the overall feeling of God Eater's gameplay, so playing 3 this time around didn't feel weird to me at all. It's still God Eater, just faster. I will say though, one major downgrade from the first 2 games to 3 is weapon impact. Landing hits doesn't feel as satisfying in 3 for some reason. It doesn't really take away from the fun factor, but it's pretty noticeable. Especially with the guns, the sniper specifically. It doesn't feel nearly as powerful as it used to. It's still enjoyable to use though, and staggering origami with a well-aimed snipe as they're running away is still really satisfying. But aside from that one kinda minor complaint, I really love the gameplay of God Eater 3. The speed of the game feels damn near perfect. I really thought it couldn't get any better after 2, but damn did they prove me wrong. The game just feels so good to move around and fight in. Unfortunately though, the game is kinda on the easy side, although I can't be sure if it's just the game itself or if it's me actually knowing what I'm doing. I mean, I do have 2 games worth of experience now. If I was still bad at the game, that would kinda be sad. I'm not trying to say the entire game was a pushover though. Some of those missions really had me on the edge of my seat. The thrill of not trying to die in 2 or 3 hits, and fighting origami until I knew their attacks like the back of my hand kept me coming back again and again. Even after Wilds came out, I found myself drawn back to the faster, more frantic gameplay of Gladiator 3, and just the overall vibe of the series as a whole. I can't say I'm some kind of veteran who's been here since the beginning. In fact, I've only been into the series for a little over a year now. But in that time, I've really grown to love the series. Its world, the characters, gameplay, and all. If only Bandai got around to giving us a 4th game. But no, Code Vein 2. For fuck's sake, man. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I had to say. When I first started playing the series properly, I really didn't expect to end up loving it as much as I do. But I guess that's the case for a lot of stuff. It starts out small at first. You just want to check it out and see what's up. And before you know it, you're talking about it all the time and recommending it to your friends at every chance you get. Wait, why does that sound so familiar? But yeah, Gladiator is pretty damn cool. It'd be even cooler if we finally got a 4th game. With the current unfortunate state of Monster Hunter Wilds, it'd be the perfect opportunity for Gladiator to come through and steal the show. I'm just saying. Realistically though, we'll probably have to wait until after Code Vein 2 drops, but whatever. Anyways, that's all from me. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.